Let's talk about what looks like a simple budget cut. The goal is always to save money. But what if that so-called saving is really just a down payment on a much, much bigger bill down the road? We're going to break down why this is such an expensive mistake.
And that's really the core question here, isn't it? On paper, it seems simple. Spend less, save more. But when we're talking about the health and the development of children, the real math tells a completely different and, frankly, a much more expensive story.
This quote just gets right to the heart of it. It looks like a saving, but it's a huge financial error. And to really understand why, we've got to start with the key concept from developmental science.
So, before we can even get to the money, we have to talk about the science. What makes early therapy for kids so unique and so important? Well, it all boils down to one thing: timing.
And to get a sense of just how big this issue is, just take a look at a state like Georgia. When you cut Medicaid rates, this isn't some small niche problem. We're talking about something that affects nearly half of all the kids in the entire state. A decision like this creates a massive ripple effect.
So this is it. This is the critical window. Think of it like a time when a child's brain is just incredibly flexible. It's building new connections like crazy. For a child with a developmental delay, getting therapy during this window isn't just helpful, it's literally the difference maker.
You can really see the two different paths play out here. On one path, with that early therapy, you see these dramatic positive changes. But on the other path, without it, those small delays can start to harden into challenges that last a lifetime. This isn't just a fork in the road for a child, it's a huge fork in the road for the state's budget, too.
Okay, now let's get to the numbers, because this is where that whole illusion of saving just completely shatters. Let's follow the money and see how one small cut ends up multiplying into a massive cost.
So here's the upfront investment that we're talking about cutting. Early therapy, things like speech or occupational therapy, costs on average a few $1,000s a year for one child. It's a targeted expense designed to work during that critical window. And yeah, it seems like an easy line item to trim.
But hold on. Now look what happens next. If a child misses out on that early intervention, they often end up needing special education services later. And the cost? It just explodes. It jumps to between $15,000 and $25,000 per student per year. That's a huge increase. And we're not talking about a one-time fee. These are annual costs that can keep coming for a decade, maybe even more. So that initial saving of a few $1,000s, it's just ballooned into hundreds of thousands of dollars in new spending, and that's just for one child.
And if you zoom all the way out, over a lifetime, the cost to support someone whose needs weren't met early on, well, that number can climb into the millions of dollars. That one decision to save a few $1,000s creates a potential million-dollar liability for public systems.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? The spending doesn't go away, it just gets kicked down the road, and it grows exponentially while it's traveling. It is the absolute definition of being penny-wise and pound-foolish.
And look, this isn't some theoretical problem that we're predicting for the future. No. The consequences of these cuts are happening right now. The warning signs are already flashing.
So what's happening on the ground? Well, providers who can't afford these low rates, they just stop accepting Medicaid. That means the wait list for kids who desperately need help right now get longer and longer. And this is especially devastating for rural communities where there might have only been one or two options to begin with.
And here's the really tough part. This isn't a switch you can just flip back on. The damage to the healthcare infrastructure is serious and it's long-lasting. Once a therapy clinic leaves the Medicaid system, it is incredibly hard to get them to come back. The entire network of care just starts to crumble.
So when you look at all of this, you have to wonder, are we even framing this debate the right way? Maybe it's not about cutting versus spending. Maybe it's about smart investing versus deferred and magnified costs.
And that's the reframe. Being truly fiscally responsible isn't about making the easiest cut. It's about making the wisest investment. Proactively supporting kids during that critical window isn't just the compassionate thing to do. It is by far the most financially sound decision you can make. So we'll leave you with this final thought because it really flips the whole problem on its head. When you actually see the massive future costs, you realize the financial risk isn't in funding early therapy. The real risk, that guaranteed multi-million-dollar expense, is in failing to.